This is Jets at Noon with Cameron Poitras and Jim Toth on 680 CJOB.
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about that goal probably more than him. I envision it just, giving him a backdoor tap in and whatnot. And obviously for him to get that OT winner and get the record, I mean, what an accomplishment. What he means to the city, this organization, from basically day one that the Jets came back. I mean, the first pick and, everything he's done in this community for the fan base. I mean, you saw the fans embrace him and, it's special. So, he's one of my best friends and, just so happy for him. He works so hard and that's a lot of goals, so it's pretty impressive.
It's easy to say nice things about your best friend, but it all depends on how your relationship is with your best friend, Jim Toth? Some best friends, you never say anything nice about each other, but that's like the way that you compliment each other. But they're sort of like, Josh Morrissey and Mark Scheifele, they're kind of asked in the media constantly to sort of compliment each other. But I feel like they wouldn't say it to each other's faces.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's a lot of, I love you, man. Yeah, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I don't know about that, but you know what? This is what stood out to me last night, Cam, was hearing, Mark Scheifele talk about yesterday and the day before about, how hard it was for him to watch Josh Morrissey not be able to play in that gold medal final. I would imagine those two had conversations about Mark Scheifele not making Team Canada.
Yeah.
I would imagine that exactly what Josh Morrissey said there yesterday is I was more worried about the goal or looking forward to the goal than Mark was. Throw in Adam Lowry, who spends time with both these guys in Calgary. And it just stood out to me that, and I mentioned this a couple of months ago, if you remember, or over a month ago, where this organization is rare in pro sports. They have drafted and developed not only some of the high-end players in the National Hockey League, but have kept them together. A lot of it through necessity, a lot of it through, we could deal some of these guys, but we don't know how long other guys coming back will stay, if they will re-sign. Look at all avenues of improving this team. But these guys are tight. And Kevin Cheveldayoff mentioned this last year going into the playoffs, that they want to win for each other. And it speaks to, throw in Nick Ehlers, Connor Hellebuck, Adam Lowry, throw in, Josh Morrissey and Kyle Connor. These are all guys that have come into this organization and grown together. There was a Jacob Trouba that went out the door after being a high draft pick. But most of these guys, it's rare in any sport that these guys stay together this long. And one of the reasons I would imagine they do is because they're really close friends.
Jets at Noon is brought to you by Wash Method Car Wash, 690 St. Anne's Road. VIP take on the text line will win a VIP car wash from our good friends at Wash Method, 204-780-6868. Shoot us a text. Yeah, 2-1 victory for the Winnipeg Jets in overtime, waiting all the way until that 26 seconds left before Josh Morrissey was able to find the back of the net. Great shot through traffic. What do you think of the game last night, Jim? I mean, to me here, I thought they could have had a better first. They had a good but not great second period. I still felt like they could still get to that next level. And then by the third period, I just thought the killer instinct, the better team, totally took things over. And all said and done, I know it was a 2-1 win over the San Jose Sharks. Some people might want to poke holes in it. They say, oh, they're the worst team in the NHL. They can barely beat them. Some people might want to come out and say that. I would definitely disagree with you because if you look at that game as a whole, there's really not much you can complain about. Yeah, I think they allowed too much off the rush. Definitely there. The one goal that San Jose did score by Eklund was an absolutely beautiful, beautiful shot on the power play. Not much anybody can do about that. But when you look at what they were able to generate in tight, Jim, in the slot, Vanacek had the game of his year. I mean, he snuffed out everything essentially in that slot area in front of him, where they had 20 grade A opportunities. And I counted them today. 20 grade A opportunities from the slot. I mean, the game should have been a lot more lopsided than it actually was.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think San Jose took it to them by any means. I give San Jose a ton of credit for having played the night before, traveled, and put on the performance they put on. But the Jets had their chances, and Vanacek had the game not only of this year, but maybe one of the top 5 of his career all time. The Jets generated enough. They hit a couple posts. That was a fantastic shot by Eklund that I don't think a lot of goalies were going to save. I would feel differently if San Jose had 2 or 3 goals and they had to fight back, and then but they didn't give up much, and they created a lot that just weren't rewarded for it.
No,
I go back to the San Jose. There was a time where I was like, well, of course, this is how our franchise-setting 9-game win streak comes to an end. It comes to the end at the hands of a San Jose Sharks team that's playing back-to-back on the road.
Yeah.
Because that's just the way some things go.
That's true.
But then again, Cam, as we've been talking about all season, this is a different Jets team. This is a different team than we've seen in the past that can't get things done against weaker teams or has struggling bringing their A game. I thought this is a team that, like against St. Louis, they found a way to win. Good teams find a way to win, and they didn't give up. And that's the best thing about it is their structure never waned. Like, they kept creating opportunities. They didn't get away from their game plan.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought at the second period it was getting really frustrating for them, and I thought, well, we'll see. But again, this is a different team than we're accustomed to or seen from this Jets. This is a team that didn't waver from their game plan, stuck at it, and were rewarded. And they set an NHL record by being the first team to come from behind and win games with less than a minute to go back-to-back. They did it against St. Louis, which I would argue up by a goal on a power play with 30 seconds to go, you should not lose that game in the National Hockey League, and they did. And then I would argue that, being up 1-0 this late and the way they played with their goaltender, but they found a way to win. And here's what I like about it, Cam. So they did everything right in my mind, and they poured it on and hit some posts, and Vanacek was great.
Yeah.
And then what happened at the end? Nick Ehlers might not get credit for this, but that shot he took that caused the rebound to come out to Morrissey is not a shot any coach would highly encourage. It's from the goal line. The chances of it going in are zero. But every other good opportunity they created wasn't going in. And so in the dying seconds, you take a chance, right? Like, everything we've done right isn't working, so let's try something weird. And he did. And the rebound came out. It didn't work for Ehlers, but I give him full credit for going, we're trying to get this to the net. We're trying to make these passes. Some are going through, some aren't. We're getting great opportunities and we're not scoring. I'm just going to try it here. It's the dying seconds. The rebound comes out and Morrissey takes advantage. I think that play by Ehlers is another sign of a veteran team, of a guy that's been around in all sort of scenarios and goes, well, let's try this. And then the rebound works. And I was like, wow, like, this team can win multiple games in multiple fashions. And even when they've played well, they'll still take a chance to go, well, nothing else is working, so let's do this. And then that worked out. So I just think it was great. And then, of course, I know we're going to get into this, but Scheifele going 4 games and everybody was wondering when it was going to happen, and to have it happen in overtime. But there's 2 other heroes besides Scheifele last night in my mind. One is Nick Ehlers for that play and just the way he played last night. The other one is Josh Morrissey. If you look at Josh Morrissey's shift times in the last 10 minutes of that game, or 5 minutes, and then playing the full 133 of overtime, I mean, he was bagged when he scored that goal. I saw him go back for that empty netter.
I have it here, right here, Jim. It was 7 minutes and 52 seconds in the final 11 minutes and 23 seconds of the game. He had almost 30 minutes of ice time. Yeah.
That is unheard of. And I don't know if they do that with him if he plays in that final of Team Canada and then travels home. But they probably do. Like, that's just knowing your team, knowing your guy. I think Scott O'Neill would admit I don't like doing that, and I might never do it again. But then again, if I get into that situation, I might. I think Josh Morrissey and his fitness and his wherewithal on the ice, the smarts, this is a core team that's been together for a long time. They know each other and they trust each other, and it paid off again last night.
The Jets, with the victory, first in the league with 85 points. Now, Washington still is ahead in points percentage. The Jets have they have a game in hand on the Jets, but back in first place in the league. Seesaw back and forth between Washington over the last number of weeks here. They extended their franchise record winning streak to 10 games. They're going to try and make that 11 in going into a back-to-back against Ottawa and Nashville. We'll talk about that as the week goes on. Leading the Western Conference, this is crazy, Jim, by 9 points now. They're 9 points ahead of Dallas, who's in second spot in the Western Conference. They're starting to create an incredible gap here where they're taking things over. And also, they've earned the league-leading 23rd home win and have improved to a league best 23-5-3 at Canada Life Center this season so far.
Yeah, I saw that gap of that far ahead of Dallas, and Dallas is winning games, and the Islanders one was tough. I saw on Sunday, I watched about 2 periods of that game, and they're finding ways to win, but I think this is insurmountable. I think, the Oilers are struggling right now. Vegas loses last night, only scoring 2 goals in Los Angeles. I mean, pick me a team that you think can catch them. I don't want to say it's locked up. I think Dallas could go on a run, and if the Jets have a 4 or 5 game losing streak, but at 9 points with this many games to go, and the fashion in which the Jets are playing, I think they're going to be tough to catch. I think the race in the West is pretty much over. It's just my opinion, and I don't like to jinx anything, but 9 points in 22 games, that's a hard thing to overcome, especially when the Jet team you're chasing is playing this well.
Let's take a break. Let's come back. On the other side, still to come, 12:30, Ken Wiebe, Jets writer and analyst with the Free Press, is going to be joining us. Also the co-host of the Kenny and Rennie podcast. He'll be with us. I want to talk to him about Mark Scheifele. We'll get into that, Jim. And I also want to get his opinion on because he hears from the public all the time like we do. How important are these final 24 games? I want to ask him that because I traveled. Right? Exactly.
With Mark Scheifele, the distance traveled, and we can go over the history. Everybody knows it, but to still be here and to be playing his best hockey is quite the story.
Also, right after this, Ryan Hartman's suspension upheld but changed. We'll discuss that when we return.
At noon with Cameron Poitras and Jim Toth on 680 CJOB.
Hey, Jeff texted the show. Jeff says, hey, guys, hello. Big win last night because they could have gotten frustrated with the goalies. Great game, but they persevered, came out on top. Good teams find ways to win. Previous teams would have found a way to lose those types of games. Yeah, Jim making that point just recently. So text the show 204-780-6868. John disagrees with me, says disagree with Cam in regards to knocking the Jets. Jets play to their opponent last night was a prime example. Also, some carelessness in Pionk's case causing some bad, dumb penalties. Yeah, John, I'm not with you on that one. John, I appreciate the text message, but I didn't think when you generate 20 high danger opportunities in the slot and you have that many block shots from San Jose, you have that many stone cold saves from Vanacek last night. Listen, you did exactly what you wanted to do. You put the puck in the slot with guys that have very high shooting percentages. Some of the high shooting percentages in the league, they just didn't find the back of the net. That's what happened last night. You find a way to win. So, John, appreciate the text message, but we'll have to disagree on that one.
Yeah, John. And if you weren't from Saskatchewan, we'd give you a car wash. But we appreciate the opinion.
Thank you.
No, I'm kidding, John. Maybe we will. But I disagree too, John, just because I think that discredits how good San Jose played.
Yeah, I
think just because you think San Jose is the worst team in the National Hockey League record-wise, that they didn't play well. If you're saying the Jets played down to the San Jose Sharks, I think they outplayed the San Jose Sharks, but I also thought San Jose wasn't like a worse-placed team.
I like that Ferrero. He's a good player with the Sharks.
Well, I put that out on social media. I could see, somebody said that maybe Darren Dreger that they may be looking at him, and I could see that he has $3.25 million left as a 5'6" D-man going into the playoffs. He just looks like a Jet player to me.
Well, he's in and around it. You know what I mean? Like he's in and around. I know he made an error on that goal, but you want a guy that's
a gamer.
He's engaged. Yeah, he's definitely engaged. There's no doubt about that.
And him and Ehlers going at it, that might have kiboshed any deal because Ehlers doesn't like him now. But I think that's the kind of qualities they are looking for in a player. And if you could get him relatively cheap, like a second-round pick, and have him next year, especially on the left side, I think that's the type of player and the cost the Jets could end up acquiring at the deadline if bigger fishes don't come out or the price is too high.
Ken Wiebe will be with us when we come back. I want to talk a little bit of Mark Scheifele and let's gauge his opinion. How important are these final 24 games before the playoffs? We'll be right back.
Yeah, it's weird because it doesn't really feel like it. With a 2-week break in between games, kind of puts a damper on the good feeling. But obviously, a win's a win, and what we've done all year is good or bad. We celebrate tonight, and come tomorrow, we're looking on to the next game. So, just want to keep it going.
That's Mark Scheifele after the game last night. 2-1 OT victory for the Winnipeg Jets, extending their win streak to 10 games. Jim, are they going to make it 11-12? Wednesday, Thursday, that game. See, this is the second time they might get stoned in Nashville based on the schedule. Like, that's going to be a real tough one. You got a back-to-back. You got a time zone change. It's a little bit of a distance. It's not like you're going from Ottawa to Toronto or Montreal or even Buffalo or Boston. You're going to Nashville.
Yeah, it's they got to play some Limp Bizkit and keep rolling. It's going to be tough.
Yeah,
and Ed Garcia, Power 97, and I were talking about this yesterday about how they thought they were through the bad part of the schedule because of the Four Nations, but then they come out of it, go to St. Louis, come home and play San Jose. Then they go on the road for back-to-backs in Ottawa and then Nashville and then back home for a Philadelphia game.
And then back on the road.
Game span. And then you throw in a Turks and Caicos too. So the road trip was Turks and Caicos and then to St. Louis, to Winnipeg, and then to St. Louis.
It's tough,
as Adam Lowry told us last week, a lot of guys getting back in practice got sunburns.
Denis, just before we get to our guest, Ken Wiebe here, Denis says, I'd like to comment on how well Stanley played last night. I think it'd be worth mentioning how good he was, especially on that stretched out poker check on Celebrini. Yep, Danny, I definitely saw that too as well, and I thought he was pretty solid last night, and he's had a good stretch of games. Batten
down the hatches, Danny. Close the blinds. Your neighbors are going to hate you, but I agree with you.
Yeah, I think he's had a good stretch of games, no doubt about that. Ken Wiebe, Jets writer and analyst with the Free Press. Hey, Ken, how are you?
Afternoon, gents. Well, thanks. How are you guys?
Wonderful.
Speaking of tan lines, welcome home, Kenny.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Amazing. You can get a tan when your suitcase doesn't arrive. But hey, happy to be back from vacation. Fun time of year.
Just modern travel there,
Sorry,
Ken.
Only 4 days. No big deal.
No, that's not even a cup of coffee. That doesn't get your feet wet in the pool yet. What do you feel about this? I mean, we had Mark Scheifele led with that clip where he said it's kind of an awkward 10-game winning streak and, separated by the big break for the Four Nations face-off. Does that make this less impressive than it is, Ken?
No, not at all. I mean, it's virtually impossible to win 10 games in a row at any level, let alone the National Hockey League, when you're looking at teams that are desperate to make the playoffs like the St. Louis Blues are trying to stay in the race. So, I think I understand Mark's point. The point is that it doesn't feel like a winning streak because there's a 2-week break in the middle, and there's probably some of the best hockey we've ever seen played during that span that didn't involve club teams. So you can understand why they feel that way. But at the same time, I mean, the Jets' ability to, we saw it yesterday. The first time it's ever happened, team going in the final minute, scoring with the net empty and winning 2 consecutive games. It's never happened before in the history of the NHL. So when you get from 8 to 10, that's an impressive way to do it. But, I mean, overall, the Jets are just trying to, the last 24 games, guys, are simple. You're trying to stack your game for when it really matters. And the Jets aren't going to win every game, even though it feels like it to some people right now. But they got to build good habits and, get ready for the middle of April. And you can't push fast forward, right? You got to play the 24 games and play them to the best of your ability if you're the Jets. And that will help prepare you for when you'll be ultimately judged.
It's interesting, Ken, the distance traveled with Mark Scheifele in this organization.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're a first-round pick in the top 10, I think every sports organization, regardless of the sport, hopes that you're a career player for them, right? But, I mean, the ups and downs, I remember the Bambi nickname when he couldn't stay on his feet. I remember, the days with Wheeler and the defensive and the mentioning of Adam Oates more than Paul Maurice, and then the classic, I got to think about myself and where I'm going. And then it comes back around to I want to be here and I want to win. And it matters to me that I'm a lifelong Jet and I believe him and all that. But it's literally a maturing, growing up process, right? And I think we forget that in pro sports, that from 18 to 31, there is a ton of distance traveled in anybody's life, let alone a pro athlete like this, and how he's still here.
100%, Jim. And I would even push rewind on that a little bit earlier. I mean, if you look at Mark Scheifele at 16 compared to what happened to him at 18, I mean, this is a guy playing Tier 2 junior hockey. And again, no disrespect to Tier 2 junior, but this is a guy who is basically ready to go to an Ivy League school and had a meeting with his mother and Dale Howarchuk and totally pivoted his life plan by going to the Barrie Colts. And within, a year and a half, he went and played for Canada at the U18s and was drafted 7th overall, where, most projections had him as a late round or in the first at best, right? So Mark set a lot on his plate between 17 and 30 plus. And yeah, I mean, were there some hiccups during that span of time? Of course there were, but look at him now. I see incredible maturity in the individual and in the player himself. This is a guy who, some people thought at various points in his career that he was a selfish player. Now you see a team first player, and you see a guy that wants to win and is motivated to win, and is very thankful for his lot in life, and has bigger goals, most importantly the Stanley Cup, but also too, we know it was a milestone moment for him passing Ilya Kovalchuk, but he wants the next batch. He wants to pass his idol and coach Dale Hawerchuk. So I think he's grown up a lot. And again, like you said, Jim, a lot of us, if we had our lives tracked under the microscope that Mark Scheifele had between 18 and 30, well, I mean, we'd have some explaining to do as well, probably. So I think he's handling himself incredibly well and is a highly motivated individual. And I think it was an important step for both sides to try to make this a lifelong deal between the two of them.
Yeah, no, and I'm with you on that, Ken. I mean, he's after Hawerchuk's 379. I mean, he did acknowledge it yesterday. It's like, it feels good to pass Ilya Kovalchuk and move past him in the franchise. But you could totally see, and he's talked about this before. But not that he's going to let himself exhale, because I don't think he has that in him. But once it gets to that 379, I think he's going to let himself celebrate a little bit more, and will then take in the accomplishment a little bit more than he did last night.
100%. And we've talked about this, the three of us here. I mean, there's been a big moment for Mark. Like at the statue unveiling, I think Mark really got a sense of, he already knew what Dale meant to the community, but I think seeing and having the opportunity to interact with some of Dale's teammates and to see how he was revered by the public and everything at that unveiling, I think was, I wouldn't say eye-opening for Mark, but I think it sort of was a recognition of how special the place was and how special it can be for him. I mean, we know Mark's favorite player is Steve Yzerman, so should it surprise us that Mark wants to be a guy who plays for one organization for his career? No, but we know there were some times where his future wasn't as set in stone as it maybe seems to be right now. But Mark's a guy who's constantly trying to get better and improving, and he has although he doesn't like talking about it openly, this is a guy who legacy is important to him. And again, this is a chance to rewrite some history. I mean, a lot of Jets fans wish Dale Hawerchuk only played for one organization, and again, it's not a direct parallel path, but I mean, we know the connections between the two, and the influence Dale had on him being chosen, and the influence Dale had on Mark as a person and a player. I mean, it's natural to see that Mark has an opportunity to become a lifelong Jet, and that's important to him, and I think it will continue to be.
I'm going to move on to the team quickly, but it just struck me, you can't write real-life romance like this. Like, here's a guy that was picked higher than he probably was predicted to on the basis and information from a Dale Hawerchuk that can not convince, but weighed in heavily to that decision. And then years later, literally, he could surpass him for the all-time franchise 1.0, 2.0, and the fact that how much they mean to each other. I mean, I don't know if this happens in pro sports in this way. Now it's 51 goals to go, so we'll leave it at that. But this is why sports is romantic at some points. Like, if he can surpass Dale after all Dale meant to him and all Dale has meant to this city and all Dale did to get him drafted here, I think is just a story that you make movies about a lot of the times because of it. But I will move on here because we're short on time, Ken, but I do want to ask you. So we're just over a week away from the trade deadline. I mentioned Ferraro, and of course, a lot of people push back and go bigger game hunting than that. And I said, fair enough, depending on the price. What do you think a week and a half out the Jets could be doing here at the deadline?
Yeah, still pretty open, Jim. I'm with you. I loved the way Mario Ferraro battled in the game yesterday, and that's a guy that could definitely provide an upgrade on the third pairing, I believe. Certainly a guy who kills penalties, plays incredibly hard, physical guy. Blocked a shot yesterday, probably should have taken a few shifts off, but there he was right back over the board. So he's a guy that, Jason Buchla at Sportsnet has mentioned before. I see him as a potential possibility. But again, is that a slashy name? No, but I mean, Kelly Moore asked Scott Arniel about it yesterday. I hear that the Jets got Niederreiter and Nemesnikov. Niederreiter was a consistent 20-goal guy, but Nemesnikov more of a journeyman at that point, and those guys have grown into really important roles in this team. So it's not always the sexiest name that ends up having the biggest impact. But I do think the Jets will add a forward and a defenseman for sure. Again, will it be the Schenn brothers? I think it's more likely the Jets would be in on Luke Schenn than Braden, and that's not a knock on Braden. Braden could definitely help the Jets, but I think it would seem unlikely that pairing comes together as a second-line center. But I do think the Jets will be active. I mean, we know Mikko Rantanen's name has been around now lately too. That would take quite a bit of mountain moving, I guess, if you will. But I expect the Jets to be making a lot of calls. But probably I'm looking for a little more subtlety than a big splashy move here going into the deadline. But, having said that, that's usually the time when Kevin Cheveldayoff pulls his own rabbit out of a hat and finds a guy who we don't even think is even available. So, looking at the Paul Stastny's scenario from 2018.
I want to talk about that Mikko Rantanen. I mean, if the Carolina Hurricanes actually are in a position where they have to move him after acquiring him, they don't have to, but like the fact that this is even being discussed is something else.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just saying it's out there. So obviously if it's out there, then either it's a lot of speculation or that people are whispering about it. But for me, I think, look at last year. Carolina, I think, had 11 pending UFAs on the roster, and they went out and got Gensel at the deadline. So I think it's more hot air than actual has a reality of it happening. But I mean, the unpredictable part is that they have a first-time general manager in Eric Tulsky, and they have an owner who is a little bit unpredictable. So could something happen? Yes. I'll be surprised if he gets moved, but if he is available, I mean, the reason there's speculation, and Elliot Friedman saying, I mean, hey, if Mikko Rantanen is available and potentially at 50%, if the Hurricanes retain, every team that's a contender could afford it, get him, but I don't know about the package it would take to get. I mean, they gave up Martin Necas and Jack Drury, so who on the Jets roster would make? I mean, they don't want to move guys off the roster. So you're basically giving away all your draft picks and top prospects. I mean, I don't see that as something that's going to be happening for a rental player either.
I'm with you on that one, Ken.
One last one on that, Ken. Then, like, say this does go, he doesn't want to stay there and sign, and then they do have to move him and retain, and they're trying to win a Stanley Cup. Is this not an absolute gong show? Like, I don't want to say that because I love the risk that you're taking to try and get one of the best players in the world. But if it transpires where he doesn't sign long-term and he moves on, or they have to move him before the deadline, it's a huge risk gone wrong.
Well, I mean, Tom Dundon made his money based on risk and calculations, right? So, I mean, it would have to be something that absolutely blows you away. And to me, Jim, I mean, the other part that we got to consider, I mean, Necas, they only had Necas for one more year, and Necas kind of made it clear he wasn't signing long-term with them either. So you kind of felt like you kicked the can down the road a little bit. But again, even if they don't sign him to an extension by March 7th, I just don't see a team that sees itself as a legitimate Stanley Cup contender punting on the season, essentially, unless they're blown away by the offer. And most of those contenders can't give away like present day players in order to get Mikko Rantanen. They want Rantanen to augment their team. Same as Winnipeg. If Winnipeg's in it, they don't want to trade Cole Perfetti for him or Nikolai Ehlers for him. They want to have Rantanen come on and play on that second line or first line to make them a better team, right? So I don't see a scenario where there's a team, right? I mean, I don't see a scenario where a contender is saying, hey, take my best defenseman and I'll take your Rantanen. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. It doesn't line up for me.
So that's what I mean. It would end up being picks and prospects for a team that's trying to win a cup. And I think I include Rantanen in the gong show. Like, if he's this dismayed or not dismayed, but unsure of what's going on and still shocked over this, then you bear some of this. You've clearly had some conversation with the Avalanche. If you wanted to stay there, you kind of had to know, like, I think he got his bluff called. I include him in this whole thing that if he's this down about being in the Hurricanes and still hasn't figured out that he was going to be moved on, I think it speaks to the fact that you called bluff. They called your bluff and now you're paying for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to know the private conversations, right? I mean, and how much is shared between agent and player. I mean, I would imagine that, Andy Scott's a really good agent. So I would imagine that he kept him right up to speed. But you also don't want to, throw a lot of hypotheticals to players in season to make it a distraction for them either, Jim. So, but yeah, I mean, the fact that he hasn't, he's had a lot going on in his life in the last couple of weeks. You go from the only organization you knew, that you went from worst to first with them. You won a Stanley Cup with them. You feel like you're a core piece. All of a sudden you're in Carolina, then you're in Montreal for the Four Nations, then you're in Boston, now you're back in Carolina, and now you're wondering where you're going to be after March 7th. I mean, that's there's a lot of mental gymnastics at play here. But I mean, again, this is one of the best players in the world. So if you want to get paid 13, 14 million, you got to start playing like one of the best players in the world again, or else you couldn't be on the move. So yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff happening there, both for player and team, and it'll be fascinating to see how everything unfolds here in the next couple of weeks. Because Jim and Cam, like, the facts are, most of the contenders are shopping in the same aisle. So what does that mean? That means either the price goes up, or you trade for somebody that not everyone else is calling about, right? So that's
the Jets have been good at that. That's for sure. Ken Wiebe, Jets writer and analyst with the Free Press. Ken, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys. Enjoy the day here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you too. Bring in the logic. Ken Wiebe.
Bring in the logic. The voice of reason and the watcher of the sky. Yeah, let's not forget that. The watcher of the Jets sky.
Whenever he's on, I feel like I'm getting scolded for like 12 minutes.
I just feel like I'm talking to my wise uncle or father who has more wisdom than me.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. Ken's the best.
But I hate to harp on it too, because I don't know the inner workings of it. But when a player is this shocked that he got moved, and he could have signed, I don't like. I kind of dig it, right? Like I kind of.
Well, it's like Gabriel Landeskog.
I don't dig it because he's one of the best players in the world, and but you're on a line with the Hart Trophy winner, and have been for years. And I think he had his bluff called here. I think they gave him an offer. I think they talked numbers, and that when we're talking 12 already, and it's not 14, if you want to stay, you find a way. Well, and if you don't, this is what happened.
And the Avalanche have, like, they waited out Gabriel Landeskog. Like, they weren't just going to hand him, and he was their captain. We got to go. We'll be right back. Ryan Hartman and the suspension upheld, but change when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
At noon with Cameron Poitras and Jim Toth on 680 CJOB.
Congratulations to Perry. He has won the Wash Method Car Wash 690 St. Anne's Road VIP text. Perry says, hey guys, we got goalied. We were able to get it done. Teams are all up to play us, and we outlasted them. Congratulations, Perry. You got a car wash from the best in the business, 690 St. Anne's Road.
Way to go, Perry.
Wash Method. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman upheld the suspension of Wild forward Ryan Hartman for driving the Senators' Tim Stützle's head into the ice back on February 1st. That's good news. However, Bettman did reduce the length from 10 games to 8. It would mean that Hartman would be eligible to play in at Seattle on March 4th with the Wild instead of March 9th hosting Pittsburgh. Jim, we got about to 45 seconds here, but what are your thoughts on this?
Ridiculous. This is like a judge going, and because the reasoning was it was too harsh of a jump from his last suspension. His last suspension for whatever he did was 3 games, and Bettman, part of the reasoning was, well, that's a big jump from 3 to 10, so we'll go 3 to 8. That's like a judge going, it's only his second DUI, so I will reduce this a little bit. I don't get it. Like, he slammed a guy's head into the ground, into the ice, on purpose. He's lucky he got 10.
Well,
he could have got more. And to go, it's too much of a jump, I think ignores what he actually did.
I think
that's a 10-game suspension if you've never been suspended.
I think you're undercutting the NHL Department of Player Safety. Ryan Getzlaff's there. He's really trying to make changes, and he's trying to bring the hammer down. Like, I mean, you saw Trevor Zegras got 3, well-deserved. I thought it would only be 1 or 2. I agree with that. So you're undercutting the importance of what they're trying to do and take hits like that out of the game. So I don't like it, but I guess it's still long. But
upheld,
that's my thought.
You've been suspended. I'm upholding it. You've been suspended a number of times. It's a big jump, but maybe now you'll stop.
Yeah,
thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm with that. Just leave it at 10. That's where I felt. Thank you very much, Jeffrey Fortier, for producing the show. That's it for me. Be back same time tomorrow. See ya.